evening. Welcome to Insights. Tonight's program will be dealing with Native Americans from Central America and North America. We had a gathering, a spiritual gathering called the National Day of Mourning in Plymouth on Thanksgiving Day. Every year, this is an annual event in Plymouth, and the guests with me today were attended and spoke at this event. It is, like I said, an annual event, the National Day of Mourning at Plymouth, and we will be talking on that, and also the situation, the existing situation, and the history of Central and South America and North America of the Native Americans. Today I have three guests with me. Juan Gonzalez from Mexico is here with us today, and Andres Ciprian, am I saying that? Lucas, yeah. I get that right, okay, Lucas, I can remember that. And then my good friend Sam Sapilia. If I say that, Sam, I can't say your name right all the time. Is it Sapilia? How do you say it? Sapio. I just know you, Sam, that's, you know. And they have, each of our guests tonight have a different aspect of view or a perception of the situations of going on in Central America and the relationship, what's going on here. First, I'd like to introduce Juan. Juan's quite an articulate person on these issues, and Juan can maybe give us first a little history of the event in Plymouth, where we had the National Day of Mourning and its annual event, and the meaning of that event.
Okay. Good night, everyone. I guess the best person to speak about this is Sammy here, but my experience, I've been attending the gathering for over 13 years now, and you know, as maybe a lot of people don't know, but last year, for the first time, the Plymouth police and the state police, they use violence they attack the group as we march on the street peacefully. And after going to court and everything, the group successfully won the case, or the charges were dropped, and a fund was created to educate people about this particular history. This year we went back to celebrate this small victory, not to celebrate Thanksgiving, but just to celebrate this small victory, and gather as we gather every year to recognize our struggles as indigenous people in this continent and how our struggles are related. People may say, well, South America, Central America, United States, Canada, and they may try to keep apart these struggles or this history. But in our memories, in our own history, and in our own documents, we know for a fact that we didn't have borders, and we didn't use passports to travel in this. This is our homeland. So we gather to remember this and to honor the struggles of our ancestors and our grandparents and the struggles of our people. Then we are here still. And then we are here working and trying to find the solutions as we live in this present time and as we move into the future, and as we are facing more complicated and more sophisticated systems of oppression. So this gathering brings people from all different Indian nations, and also welcomes everyone that identifies with this struggle, other groups of people, that now live in this country called United States. So we can share this struggle and support each other, even if it's just on a spiritual level. But it is very important because as we all struggle together, you know, we all can find solutions to make a better society for everyone.
Yes, there'll be a film coming up a video, sorry, Eric, that I did on that day, Thanksgiving Day, last November, which will show a lot of this gathering and the spiritual meaning. So following our interviews here this evening. But you're right, probably Sam's, I know because I've been there a couple times, Sam is probably really the historian on the actual event. Sam, can you tell us something about that National Day of Mourning from your perspective?
Oh, National Day of Mourning is a spiritual thing. It started 27 years ago when a group of Indian people decided to bring out the history, the true history of Plymouth Rock, and which coincides with the Deer Island thing. That's all coincides with one another because it started here at Deer Island and went south and came around through to Plymouth, where Master Soyot was the chief at the time. And after he died, his son King Philip took over, and that's when King Philip had broken away from the Confederacy, what they called the Mourning Confederacy, all the way from Virginia all the way to Maine. One of the biggest confederacy in North America here today was the Mourning Confederacy. And when King Philip's War started, they broke away from the Confederacy, and that's what started the whole Indian Revolution, was because King Philip thought he could win that whole thing by himself, but he couldn't. He needed the Confederacy, and the Confederacy was kind of lax about helping him out because they knew that he couldn't come up to the standards of Indian people the way they did things. Like you take out a General Custer's last stand, all the Indians came together. And that's the way it should have been done in the King Philip's War, because we would have still had Plymouth down there. We would have had a lot of places around here that belonged to Indian country. Indian country today, North America, spreads all the way from Canada to South America. At one time, the people from Mexico and through South America were part of the United States until they separated and put border lines across. And that's another thing, that's how they separated Indians, to keep them away from each other so that we couldn't come together in order to complete a huge confederacy that could offset all of these wars between the Indian and the French and the British and things that were really happening. But Plymouth Rock is what all started when they decapitated King Philip's head, because his wife and kid was a prisoner at the time. And when they took him, his wife and his son, wife and kid, as a prisoner, King Philip, they had him where they wanted him, and King Philip had to give up in order to save his wife and kid, because they were either going to kill him or sell him. And that's when slavery started too, was across along the coastlines here I can't. Sometimes I forget.
You're the historian, so talk to me. It's not the camera.
Yeah.
You're the historian. This is Cameron Connell. He's on my show, off on the Inside Show. He's an historian on issues, and he's probably loving this in the sense that you can go on and on about this history, which is really good.
Well, see, this is all stems from Deer Island.
That's what we want to know. These people, Deer Island is
the most important part, because Deer Island is what we call an internment camp, a prison camp. See, that's where when the Holocaust started of Indian people, because the seven internment camps they had here in Boston were outside of the limits of Boston, but the internment camps all come into play when they used to bring them from Watertown down to Deer Island here and put them over there to starve them to death or freeze them out with, in a winter time. And That's,
How many people do
there
you...
was about 200, over 300 people there. But the numbers kept getting bigger and bigger over the years. And all of those islands they have out there, they call it the National Park Islands out there now, but all of those islands out there have Indian burial grounds on them. And the history of Deer Island hasn't been told the way it should be told for the Indian history part of all the internment camps and all the Holocaust of Indian people. Because if those Indians in those days that didn't want to become Christian Indians, that's where they were put over on Deer Island. And whoever became Christian Island was protected, but not protected because of their ways and doing things. They were protected because the people wanted the lands, and they took the lands away from them. And there's a lot of history that goes with those national park islands out there.
I hear they're building a monument on Deer Island to tell some of that history?
Yes, we're gonna have a monument out there, but there's other things that have to come into play in order to tell the history of part of the North American Indian people here in Massachusetts, where it all started.
Will they be putting maybe something next to the monument to tell some of that history?
We're gonna have. I'm the head of the committee, which the MWRA didn't want me to be head of, and the Commission on Indian Affairs chose me to be the head of the committee in order to get a memorial, and get another building to tell the history of our people, a museum, something like that.
Yeah, that would be nice.
And plus, on all islands, we'll have something else there where all of these other burial grounds are placed, because all of those people at Plymouth during the King Philip War, and when they captured the Indians, they used to bring them up here into the internment camps too, and bring them there, because it wasn't only Wampanoag, there was other Indian people from across the country today.
And I've heard a lot that a lot of them starved out there, starved to death, a lot froze to death. Were there any people trying to help them?
No, well, this I guess it's a preacher named Elliot, John Elliot or something. He tried to help him, but they wouldn't let him do it because he was trying to get food out there, and they would, if he tried to take food or help him, go out and help him, and they'd tip his boat over or push him back, and they wouldn't let him go out there at all. That was on Deer Island, yeah.
On Deer Island, yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite a history of Deer Island, huh?
Oh, it's one of the major histories in Indian country today is Deer Island. That's where everything started, right here in
Right here in Deer Island, yeah.
And this is where it should end.
Good point. we want to discuss too was that there's a lot of similarities for the situation that's happening here with the Indian population to what's happening to the Indian population in Central South America. Andres is from Guatemala, and it was sort of like, give us an update, like say in the refugee situation.
Él pregunta cuál es la situación de los refugiados mayas ahora en el día de hoy.
Pues antes que nada, gracias por tener la oportunidad de venir aquí.
First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to be here in this program.
Vengo de New Bedford y
I live in New Bedford, Massachusetts.
nuestra situación es muy triste, lo que es quiché, maya.
Our situation is very sad, very terrible, the situation of the Maya Quiché.
Cada día matan personas y nunca declaran la noticia.
Every day back in Guatemala, in the Maya Quiché area, there are killings happening, people being killed, but never is reported in the news.
Y no entendemos por qué razón hacen estas cosas, pues el gobierno nunca hace nada.
And we don't understand why, the Guatemalan government covers these situations.
Entonces, por esta razón, las personas se huyen. Están en América, en Europa,
And that's
Costa Rica.
And that's the reason why we have to flee our countries, to survive, to stay alive. Some people go to Europe, some people come here, or some people go to other countries in Central America.
Y lo más triste es que en Guatemala matan a la gente maya. No pasan siquiera la noticia, no hay declaración.
The sad thing in Guatemala is when a Maya Indian is killed, the news, the newspapers, the TV never reports this.
Yeah, this is why I like to do my Inside Show and others across the nation that aren't part of corporate America.
Dice que
do these
por eso
shows.
le gusta hacer este programa, porque este programa da esta información, los otros programas no hablan de estos asuntos.
Sí, y una de las cosas más tristes, ¿no? Que los gobiernos hacen un acuerdo de paz, pero es firmado en un papel.
The sad thing too is that the governments, they sign a peace agreement on paper only.
Yo creo que la paz no se firma en un papel, sino que la paz se hace.
And we believe that peace, you don't sign it on paper, it's something that you do, it's something that is alive.
You mean to say we've broken another treaty?
Dice que entonces se ha roto otro compromiso.
Ya, no, pues muy triste de verdad que todas las cosas que está pasando, pues, aparte de que han robado todas las tierras y ahora quieren matar toda la gente.
It is very terrible what is happening and has been happening. Not just they stole our lands, but they've been trying to kill us off since the first time that the Europeans and the Spanish came. And that genocide, that killing still is going on.
Yes, I've spent a time, as you know, through Central America and witnessed this. And Juan, we've talked about...
Dice que él ha estado en Centroamérica y él ha sido testigo, él ha visto todo eso.
And Juan, you and I have talked about the situation of corporate America, the investments that we made down there, which is like we did in the show on the School of the Americas that you saw here on WCAT about the fight for the land. And the biggest fight they have is the land as it was here for the Indians. And this is the battle that's going on for corporate America, you know, forcing the people off their lands, and then they have to flee for their lives, and then they come here into Europe, as you said, to other countries, and then they treat them, they come here as like they're some sort of refugee who's coming here because they're, you know, they want to get welfare or something. We're here, they're actually driven off their lands, and we're the ones responsible, corporate companies that we support are responsible for driving these people off their lands, and then we complain when they try to live. I think that's pretty much we're seeing it the same way, because that's my perception. We've talked, Juan, about this NAFTA and the. Is it pretty much that way too?
Yeah, it is.
What's the matter?
It is. That's exactly what it is. NAFTA. As we know through history, you know, this system of oppression is in the process of being improved. And NAFTA is just another model, you know, a sophisticated model to keep exploiting, you know, the resources of the land. In the case of NAFTA, this is not something new. NAFTA was in the works for like 10 years or more. The U.S. government invested millions of dollars training people, you know, to control and to implement this NAFTA thing in Mexico. The last 4 presidents in Mexico were trained here in the United States in the major, you know, universities such as Harvard, Yale, you know, and they were trained with all these economic system, so they can go back, give them the power, you know, to be the president, run the country, and change the constitution and make all these other laws to allow foreign investment, to allow the exploitation of the resources, and to get away under the law.
Yeah, I believe that that change in the Constitution, the Revolutionary Constitution of 1910 in Mexico, and this isn't just Mexico, what's happening is Guatemala, Honduras, we all know many countries, but the recent one is the change during the Bush administration to not change but to delete out of the Constitution the statement that all that land in southern Mexico was common owned and couldn't be sold. That was deleted out of the Constitution so they could sell the land to these investors. And which is now, is the statement from the Chase Manhattan Bank we know, right, that the situation is the Indians won't get off what they want now say is their land. And the statement from the spokesman of the Chase Manhattan was that these Indians are seriously hurting our investments, and they must be eliminated.
Yep.
You know, I mean, that's how blunt, I mean, you know, he has to come up with a new word for that, how bad it is. And the situation, this is not new. You see, my chapter here in Boston of Veterans for Peace is the Smedley Butler chapter, and we named it after Smedley Butler. He wrote a great book called War is a Racket. And one of the things he used to talk about and say to people was, you know, you see that country over there, that Central American country? Well, I invaded that with the U.S. Marines for international banking. You see that country over there, that Indian country there? I invaded that with the U.S. Marines for United Fruit. I went over there for Wall Street. He says, Al Capone controlled 2 cities. I controlled 4 countries. I'd teach him a trick or 2.
Yeah.
And so this is history. In fact, that was at the turn of the century. And it's just continuing, and NAFTA is, like I say, just a continuation of more of the taking of the Indians' lands.
Yeah, NAFTA was supposed to be the jewel of this whole program, you know, of controlling, you know, the resources. But as is the case in Chiapas, indigenous people say enough is enough. And you know, as you remember, on January 1st of '94, the Zapatistas came out of the jungle, the rainforest in Chiapas, and take over a few cities and make a strong statement or declaration of war against not just the Mexican government, but this whole system of oppressing people, you know. And NAFTA basically was, or still is, a big danger, you know, to not just indigenous people in Mexico, but, you know, the rest of Central South America as well. So the struggle, you know, since '94 still is there. Hundreds of people have been killed by the Mexican army. Innocent people have been massacred, you know, children, pregnant women, elders. And all of these with the blessings of the U.S. government, Wall Street, of course. And we are organizing and talking to groups, talking to people, you know. What we are asking is for understanding of this situation. What we are asking is for support. And if people here in this country become aware and conscious of these political situations, and they get involved, they can help us a lot. You know, we were talking last year, we were talking about divestment. We were talking about, well, you know, faxing the president, faxing Congress, and so on. We need people to get involved. It's not just the survival of the Indian people, but it's the survival of the people in general, you know, of living in balance with nature, with the resources, using wisely the resources. The earth has enough resources for everyone, but the knowledge of living in balance is lost. Indian people, we have that knowledge, and we share that all the time, but we need to come to some understanding, you know, to erase all those evil crimes committed against Indian people, you know, stop the genocide against indigenous people, not just ethnic cleansing, but, you know, the cultural genocide.
Right, and this, a lot of people don't realize that this is costing them quite a bit in their tax dollars in a sense. Like last year, of the '97, I know for sure, I'm not sure about '98, but '97, the largest procurement for arms to Central and South America went to Mexico for this, which, as you were speaking of NAFTA, the first day of NAFTA, January 1st, was the chosen day, as Marcos made the statement. We chose January 1st for our uprising because it's the first day of NAFTA, and NAFTA is a death sentence for my people. And he said that to the international press. And there's been very little negotiation, and the situation is getting worse. They are surrounded by the 2/3 of the Mexican army. And I mean, this is, and you can't get many human rights watchers. We send people from veterans. You can't get within 60 miles. They were denying visas to human rights watchers. And this is, as you say, a country so close to this. So how does it go again?
Yeah, in Mexico we say, so far from God, so close to the United States.
Yes.
Yeah, just for people to get an understanding of Chiapas. Chiapas is a small state, but it's very rich in resources. The area where the Zapatistas are is not bigger than this town, Winthrop. Now imagine that all of a sudden you have 60,000 soldiers all around Winthrop, and you cannot move freely. You cannot go into Boston.
I don't think we can imagine that. I don't think most people here in Winthrop could even. It's hard to imagine me. 60,000 people surrounding, army, military surrounding us in this little town of Winthrop.
Now, well, you have very close the airport. You know how noisy it is. But imagine the helicopters and the fighting jets of the Mexican army flying over your house, very close, very low, day and night. I mean, the level of harassment.
We can kind of imagine the air traffic day and night. We can relate to that, yeah, okay.
But, you know, just the level of what is called low-intensity warfare being used in this area. Imagine, you know, your children are scared, you know, scared to death, you know, watching the soldiers coming and going, coming into your house, you know, with no reason, like with the excuse like they are looking for weapons or something, you know. And it's just the fear. It's unbelievable. It's hard to understand the level of fear, you know. And that's making people, you know, escape. Those that are lucky enough, you know, to escape and go to maybe to a different town, you know, in Chiapas or into Mexico City or come all the way up here.
This subject of, like I'm glad you mentioned, low-intensity warfare. This is trained at Fort Benning, Georgia. I was down to that production. I'm going to be doing another one where 2,300 people were arrested. That situation, these people down in Fort Benning, these Latin American officers are trained in that low-intensity warfare to go down there, learn it here, and go down there to do it to the Indian population. And so the Indian population isn't aware of the response to them, but they know what their response will be, to flee and to leave the land out of fear, even though they don't kill them on the spot. You know, there's individual deaths here, and that somebody disappears at night. But a lot of them see their brother dies, he disappears. They think it's best that I leave before I disappear. And they come to this country like Sam.
That's similar to the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs. They train their Indian people to be policemen on reservations, and it's similar to what's going on at Fort Benning, Georgia. Then they release them to Indian reservations to harass and to keep after the people that are outspoken. And the BIA, that's BIA's policy in order to keep the Indians in hand. Our problem here is the same as theirs in South America, and it all started right here in North America, and it's continued to go to different countries of people with color.
Yeah, it's
not only here, but in Africa and all over the world with people with color. White people, they don't bother, but Indian people, people with color, they harass them and they do whatever they have to do in order to keep the resources in the land. That's the number of the game, is the land and the resources. And this is what they have done here in North America, the same thing, and in Canada, the same thing, and now it's going on down in South America. And all these big corporations are responsible for all this because that's where they put all their money into these places to train these, what I call guerrillas, to go down and harass these people and shoot them and kill them, like Coca-Cola in South America. When they first moved down there, they were the culprits of a lot of massacres and murders down there. And that's
Coca-Cola.
why I always boycott Coca-Cola, because they
reason.
were responsible. They were the #1 corporation down there to take the lands and the resources, and they hired all of these people to go out and push these people off the land. If they didn't move, they would shoot them and kill them. But Coca-Cola, the corporation, was responsible for all of that. I understand what's going on all across the world today. And I know what's going, like you call the international law, you call the Constitution. The Constitution now is being ridiculed through the United States government, and what happened in the O.J. Simpson trial is that they discredited the laws and things of the United States, because it became a racial thing. And this is what's happening with my people here in America, because we're starting to use the law against them. We interpret it, we can understand, and we try to use it in order to regain what we have lost. But it's an ongoing thing, because when we do something, they put other committees on, and the committees go so long, and once we reach their higher level of competing against them or with them, they change again. See, this is the policies of the Indian government, the federal government, is to keep the Indians under their policies and keep them from integrating into the white man's world because of our knowledge of the history and our way of life.
This is an economic injustice that, as Archbishop Romero said, the economic injustice is probably the root of all evil. And, we're not alone on this, too, is the words of Woodrow Wilson after the First World War, that he said in a major speech in Ohio, said, every child, woman, and man be not naive and be aware that the seeds of World War I were economic rivalry. And the situation, as we've pointed out before, that the land, and everybody knows the value of real estate. If you own your own home, or whatever, you own the land where the people you live is probably the most valuable thing in the world. And this land has been taken and taken and taken and taken, and it's continuing now, as we spoke, in the situation why this is going on in Central South America for NAFTA, for these investors to move our factories down there. It was subsidized to get cheap labor, because we shouldn't be paying these pampered Western workers here $18 an hour. We can get some slave for less than $2 an hour.
And why they moved down there was because they were getting a lot of feedback from the people here in America, because they were polluting everything around here, so they had to change that. So they figured they'd go down to Mexico and do the polluting down there, which they are doing.
Oh yes,
because
I read that.
every river here in North America today is polluted, and all of these sewage treatment plants that they put on all of these rivers and Deer Island and everything else, it's no help. It doesn't help at all.
Yeah, people.
It's just a waste of money. And if they would come back and listen to the Indian people, the people of this land, they would learn something. They could understand what's going on.
I mean, the rivers were not polluted when the Indians owned the land?
Oh, no. Well, that's because, the industry,
They only got started to get polluted back in 1940s, because when I was a kid, I used to go out and play ball all day, and when I get thirsty, I'd get down to the river and drink the water.
You drank the water out of the river? Young people today couldn't imagine that.
They can't do that today because of all of
They actually drank the water.
All these hydroelectrics and power plants and pulp mills and all of these. All of this crap is going into the rivers and streams now, like the sewage treatment plant here on Deer Island now. All of that crap is coming from the State House, is going to go in there.
From the State House.
They're going to pollute the whole.
I mean, they're dumping the crap from the State House is getting dumped here in Winthrop.
That's true. That's what it is.
Winthrop people might be curious to know that, because we were up at the State House the other day. Maybe we didn't have to have it coming all the way down the pike. But anyways,
people have to understand that these issues are real and they are close to everyone. Sammy mentioned Coca-Cola. Thousands of people drink Coca-Cola every day. NAFTA and all these companies going overseas, setting up sweatshops. People may say, oh, this is great. We go to a third world country, and we help their economy, create jobs. It's not true. Foreign investment, always has been a weapon. This is one of these. It's even probably worse than the atomic bomb. Let me give you an example with the sweatshops. If you read the label of what you wear, your clothes, your shoes, I mean, you see a made in Mexico, made in Guatemala, sweatshops,
Sweatshops.
Now, you may say, well, this is great, this company employs hundreds of people. Probably. But you don't know the conditions. The conditions are really, really terrible. Like in the case of Guatemala, there are factories, cloth factories, producing brand name clothes than you find in the stores here in Boston, in this area, okay? But the requirement to work in this factory is like if you are, the majority, they put these factories in the rural areas, where the majority of the Maya Indian community lives. If you're going to work for the factory, you have to, in the case of the women, you have to change your traditional clothes in order to be allowed to work in the factory. You are not allowed to speak your language. The official language in Guatemala is Spanish, so you have to speak Spanish. You have to become a member of some Christian sect. Those are the requirements for employment. So what it does? Destroys the culture. And that's part of the agenda, to destroy the Indian culture. So as you can see, these investments don't create employment, don't benefit the country, because the profit, the money that is made doesn't stay in the country. And there are no benefits, because once the company gets tired of they just close the doors and they leave. And they left this destruction, all around. So we have to see these foreign investments as another weapon to destroy and to oppress and to finish, this process that started, 500 years. This agenda of to exterminate Indian people,
Right, and it's going on. And believe me, Juan and Sam, I want to thank, and Andres for coming this evening. And hopefully we've been informative to the residents of Winthrop and others that maybe watch this video of some understanding to start to research and be conscientious and to look out why is this happening. And as bad as all this happening too, the hurricanes that have recently hit Central America and the devastation is just beyond comprehension. This on top of the oppression that's going on for so many of these people. And maybe again sometime we can have you back as a guest and we can go on, because I have a feeling we could talk about this for the entire day. And I appreciate it. Thank you for coming, because what the people, many of them would like to know about this information, like to know, like Sam, you're a historian and you fill in for Connell today, on the history of Deer Island and its relationship and the Indian people to here in Winthrop. And it's been really good.
Yeah, I just want to say something at the end. If people are interested, want more information, I'm sure they can find us through you. I know
they can always get in touch with me at the Indian Center on 105 South Huntington Avenue over
the Indian
Jamaica
Center,
Plain.
105
South
Huntington Avenue, the Indian Center.
Yeah, North American Indian Center.
Sure.
In Jamaica Plain.
Yeah, drop in, see Sam. Sam will give you a lot of history and a lot about what's happening here at Deer Island. Any last word, Andres?
¿Quieres decir algo más?
No, pues gracias por la oportunidad que me dieron.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for this opportunity.
Ojalá que el gobierno de Estados Unidos que nos ayude en todo Centroamérica, Chiapas, tanto también hay mayas ahí también y Quiché, que es la población más atacada hoy en día por los militares.
We hope that the U.S. government wakes up and really helps indigenous people, especially the Maya Quiché, because they are the ones that have been suffered the most.
Okay, we'll close up here tonight, but I guess we could put it in a way that you're saying is an injustice to one human being is an injustice to us all. And we, the people, have to, as Juan says, wake up the American government and as we get more informed, to stop this oppression and bring peace and harmony to our brothers and sisters throughout Central and South America. Thank you for watching Insight, and follow the clip that's following. There'll be a video showing the demonstration, and Juan and Sam spoke there, and I want you to follow that, and maybe next year you come down to Plymouth with us for the National Day of Mourning on Thanksgiving Day. It's quite a spiritual event, and you'll feel something there when you go. So again, thank you for watching Insights, and good night. Good night, folks.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We focus on issues in Indian country today, and that's a very key part of National Day of Mourning.
When we were talking to some of the people at the Pilgrim Progress Parade that they just had a little while ago, they said, you know, while they say you have every right to be here, they thought perhaps some of the anger toward the Pilgrims is misdirected because they said the Indians and the Pilgrims got along.
Well, that is the Plymouth fantasy. That is the Disneyfication of history that we're fighting against and trying to correct. That's why we're here. That's why we come to Plymouth. The Plymouth mythology is that the Pilgrims came over, they were wonderful people, the Indians welcomed them and fed them, and everybody lived happily ever after. In fact, the Pilgrims' treatment of Native Americans was no better than any other group of European invaders. And the Native Americans here did not live happily ever after. The Pilgrims were responsible for stole land and were responsible for attempting to destroy Native cultures and for murdering Native people just as much as the Spanish and any other of the European invaders. This is the perimeter, please.
I'm currently a Boston Public School teacher.
Oh, cool.
So I'm here
I'm on a battery.
to pick up more insights to offer students.
I understand.
One of the ways that we're trying to deal in the public school system for students to acknowledge whom they are is utilizing a situation like this. This is a real-life situation where there are disputes amongst people whom they feel whom they are and they don't know how to live along with each other. So this is a good example for the students just to see the reality here in the country. Myself, I come from the South, from Central America, and we have our own ways that we keep our ways alive. This is a way that we help from the South, the indigenous groups of the North. And it's a way that I use to teach youngsters how to recognize respect of all cultures as well as themselves.
And you teach at the Boston Public School?
Yes, I am. I'm currently at the Mary Curley School.
Where in Central America?
Nicaragua. This is a very good display. As you see right now, there's peace here, there's harmony, you can feel the energy, and it's our job as older folks, as elders, to transmit this knowledge to the young folks of America. America is filled with immigrants, and a day like this is what we need to bring harmony amongst each other, regardless of sometimes the negativities of how we feel.
Now, were you here last year?
No, I was not. I was in Boston for last year. We had our celebrations there.
How long have you taught at the Mary Curley School?
I've been there 3 years now, and I've been doing workshops at other schools, the Rafael Hernandez, the Grover Cleveland, and I've worked with many other church groups and youth groups. And everything that we do is we take traditions from all indigenous groups that have been here from the beginning of times, and I translate that into modern words. Again, trying to restore the level of respect that we had as indigenous groups in the modern way of life here in America.
And you say you're from South America?
Yes. Mesoamerica. Central America.
Nicaragua.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit, on the comparison of the two?
Yes, in Nicaragua, Honduras, Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico, we also have a struggle between the modernists who have lost vision as to what our traditions were as indigenous people. Take, for instance, the plight in Mexico and Chiapas, the plight of the indigenous people in Guatemala. The majority of the people that live in these areas are indigenous. And again, because of the lack of education on the modern scale, they're not able to defend themselves, and there's always a struggle between who's going to survive in these lands. And we see that here too.
Could you talk a little bit about Chiapas?
Chiapas is a quite interesting place because it epitomizes the indigenous struggle. These are people who are willing to lay their lives down just to protect the land that at once had the people that walked and represented them, the Maya, the Aztec. And these ways have not changed. I was there, I was in Mexico recently, and the people are still there. The traditions are still, we have traditional food that we've eaten millions of years ago.
The globe and some of the states' legislatures say that they don't like the word genocide.
Well, when you look at the true meaning of genocide, and it's a very basic thing. People were exterminated. You have little babies and papooses that were bayoneted, men, women, and children that were run down, shot, and killed. That's murder. That's rape. That's pillage. That's absolute barbaric slaughter. And it doesn't sit well with me And it shouldn't sit well with any human being who condones it. This government was founded on that. It's a total heinous act, and it should be brought to the public's attention. And if it's not, if people don't understand that, and they can just say, well, it's in the past, forget about it, get over it, get over the Jewish Holocaust, get over slavery, get over, you know, the extinction, you know, the extermination of Native Americans, then there's a problem, okay? It really is.
Blow up the face.
Now, what happened in 1621 may have been nothing more than a harvest home festival. But the Indians who attended were not even invited by the Pilgrims, who considered our people to be devils. There was no turkey, cranberry sauce, or pumpkin pie. As a matter of fact, just days before this alleged Thanksgiving communion, a company of pilgrims led by Miles Standish actively sought the head of a local chief. The Pilgrims deliberately caused a rivalry between two friendly Indians, pitting one against the other in the classic European method of divide and conquer. And an 11-foot-high wall was erected around the entire Plymouth settlement for the purpose of keeping the Indians out. Now, native people do not give thanks just one day a year. Every day we thank the Creator for this beautiful earth and for our survival. But we will not give thanks for the European invasion of our country. We will not celebrate the theft of our lands and the genocide of our people. We will not sing and dance to please the tourists who come here seeking a Disneyland version of our history. Attention to all the tourists that may be out there. If you are expecting us to put on a show, you'd be better advised to go down to Plymouth Rock and watch the tide wash over it.
A lot of people wanted to go over and try to help these Indians, but they wouldn't let them. They wouldn't let them go out there, give them food, or help them any way that they can. They had to go out there and survive by themselves and do what. A lot of them had died, and a lot of them had frozen to death and starved to death over there. And that's where the enslavement started for Indian people, because all of these islands from Deer Island all the way along the coast past New York and down through, which were slave markets, in order to push the Indians, put them into the slave market and ship them over to England or wherever they put them. They even changed them for black people that came over here. So this is part of the slave movement. So here's some of the historical background. Ponkapog was originally a Massachusetts praying Christian Indian plantation. In 1675, on August the 30th, it was designated one of the 5 internment camps for Montecana Nationals and the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Its inmates were forced onto Deer Island on November 1675. Natick was originally a Massachusetts praying Indian plantation. It was the first praying Indian town and became a theological training center for Native American Christianity. In 1675, on August 30th, it was designated as one of the 5 internment camps for Montecana Nationals in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Its inmates were the first internment camp internee to be forced onto Deer Island, leaving Natick on October 30th, 1675. Hanamesset was originally a Nipmuc praying Indian plantation in 1675. On August 30th, it was designated one of the 5 internment camps for Monte Carlo nationals and the Massachusetts Bay Colony. However, within a week of its inhabitants had escaped. Later in 1676, some of the people of the Hassanisset were captured and forcibly sent to Deer Island. Well, this is part of the history of Indian people here in North America on the eastern seaboard. It don't only happen here, but it happened all across the eastern seaboard. Not only to the Wampanoags, but it was to the Passamaquoddies, the Micmacs, the Narragansetts, and every other Indian that was around here that didn't want to become praying Indians. So if they didn't become praying Indians, they were designated as hostile Indians. And this is what we are today. We're hostile Indians. That's what they're calling us. But really, we're not hostile Indians. We're what they designated us last year as these people that go out and start trouble. And what was that word they told us we were last year? Terrorists. They called us terrorists. In our own country, we're terrorists because we're trying to protect our lands and our freedom and our rights as Indian people. That's all we're doing.
Are the corporate elites and the power and the state, which not only use their ruthless violent law enforcers, but even worse is their systematic legislation of greed. All of these forms of prevalent violence, silent and lethal, create the conditions for our revolution. Unfortunately, we, the indigenous people, are the ones who suffer the consequences of this manifest destiny mentality. We know the history of the invasion: massacre, rape, racism, poverty, broken treaties, nations destroyed.